I wasn't supposed to open the drawer. She'd taped it shut. Not locked, taped. As if the warning wasn't physical security, but emotional intimidation. Like she'd dare me to question it. Like it was a test. For weeks, I stared at it. Every time I walked past our bedroom dresser, that bottom drawer whispered, "Not for you." It wasn't even subtle. The blue masking tape had "Do Not Open" written in her handwriting. Curvy, confident, dramatic. So, of course, I opened it. I wish I could say I found something shocking, like love letters or someone else's shirt, or even a burner phone. But no, what I found was worse. Intentional. Planned. A small notebook. A cheap planner. The kind you'd buy at a gas station. I flipped through it. Each page marked with dates. Times. Short notes like, "Dinner with Jay, black dress. Stay over. Tell him it's the book club night. One night a month. Stick to script." That last one. That one. It knocked the air out of my lungs. It wasn't a slip of the tongue. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't heat of the moment nonsense. She'd planned it. She scheduled it. One night a month. The same phrase she'd used on me, with those puppy dog eyes and fake vulnerability. The same phrase that started this whole circus. Back then, I thought she meant space. Boundaries. Self-care. All the buzzwords she tossed at me while I sat there, nodding like a spineless fool, thinking, maybe this is just a phase. But it wasn't a phase. It was a tactic. A system. And I was the puppet on the calendar. So I did the only thing a broken, confused, desperate man could do. I started marking the calendar myself. Not with questions. Not with confrontation. But with presence. If she wanted one night a month, she'd get exactly that. Nothing more. No texts. No notes. No arguments. I vanished from the routine like a ghost with a time card. I became a once-a-month husband. And for the first 2 months, she didn't say a word. But on month 3, she cracked. And what poured out of her mouth made me realize the betrayal had only just begun. The 3rd month was the first time she looked nervous. Not guilty. No, that would have been too honest. Just unsettled. Like a woman who opened the fridge expecting orange juice and found a rattlesnake coiled inside instead. She didn't know I'd seen the planner. She didn't know I'd been counting her lies. She definitely didn't know I'd started playing her game better than she did. I walked in that night exactly at 7:03 p.m., the time she had written for our night. I didn't text ahead. I didn't bring flowers. I didn't smile. I just walked in like an actor hitting his mark, took off my coat, and sat at the edge of the couch like it was a doctor's waiting room. She came out of the bedroom in a silk robe. The red one. The one she used to wear when she actually wanted to be with me. Back before the monthly intimacy rule, before the space, before the drawer. She froze when she saw me. "You're early," she said, even though I wasn't. I didn't answer. I just looked past her, at the hallway, at the faint smell of cologne that wasn't mine still hanging in the air like a ghost that hadn't cleaned up after itself. I don't even wear cologne. Never have. She started talking fast, too fast, about how she had a long week, about work stress, about her therapist suggesting boundaries again, about needing time before engaging. I let her talk. I wanted to hear how deep she'd bury herself before realizing I was already holding the shovel. Then I asked a question. A stupid, simple, calm question. "So, is this still the night?" She blinked. "What?" I leaned back slowly, stared at her robe, and said, "You said one night a month. Just checking if this was still it. You know, before I go." The panic in her eyes was instant. Not because she wanted me to stay. No, because she didn't want the optics of me leaving again. The neighbors were starting to notice. Her friends were asking where I was. Her mother had called me last week and asked if we were experimenting with an open marriage. Funny how everyone else knew before I did. She forced a smile. Sat next to me like she was performing for an audience that wasn't even there. She reached for my hand. I let her hold it. Cold fingers. Shaky grip. Zero sincerity. "Of course it's still our night," she whispered. "I've just been distracted lately." I nodded. Then I looked her straight in the eye and said something I never thought I'd say out loud. "Do I get to be your distraction this month? Or is he still here?" The color drained from her face like someone pulled the plug. Her lips moved, but no words came out. Her grip loosened. Her eyes shifted to the hallway, back to me, then to the floor. That's when I stood up. No yelling. No slamming doors. I just stood up and walked to the kitchen, opened the wine cabinet, and poured exactly 1 glass, for myself. I didn't offer her any. I took a sip and stared at the same drawer. The one she'd taped shut. She didn't know I'd opened it. Not yet. But the way she looked at me that night, like I'd become a stranger she couldn't read, told me I was finally in control of the game she started. And she wasn't ready for what came next. 3 days after our third, monthly night, she started hovering. I don't know how else to describe it. She wasn't affectionate. She wasn't apologetic. She didn't ask if I was okay or if I was staying. She just hovered, like a bird circling something it used to own but couldn't quite land on anymore. She started texting more. Not actual conversations, just shallow check-ins. Hope your day's going well, smiley face. Or dinner with the team. Be safe out there. Useless things. Words without weight. But I responded to every single one of them with a dot. Just a dot. A period. No emotion. Just confirmation that I'd seen the message. I didn't do it to be cruel. I did it to make a point. She wanted rules? Fine. Then we'd play by her script. One night a month wasn't a suggestion anymore. It was the contract she authored. And I was done pretending to be the one desperate to renegotiate it. A week later, I came by to pick up some tools I'd left in the garage. She wasn't expecting me. Her car was there. His wasn't. But when I walked in through the side door, I heard her voice in our bedroom. Soft, too soft. Laughing. Muffled. I didn't barge in. I didn't eavesdrop. I didn't need to. I just walked to the front door, placed the extra house key she never returned on the entry table, took a photo of it there with the hallway in the background, and left without a sound. An hour later, she texted, "Did you stop by?" I replied with the picture. No caption. No emoji. She called 3 times. I didn't pick up. The next day, she showed up at my buddy's place, the one I'd been staying at for weeks now. She knocked on the door like she owned the building. Wore this frantic look, no makeup, hoodie thrown over pajamas. A look I hadn't seen on her in years. Vulnerability, but not the soft kind. The kind that comes from panic. "Can we talk?" she asked as I stood there blocking the doorway. I let her in. Sat across from her. Said nothing. She sat on the edge of the couch and blurted out the dumbest sentence I'd heard from her yet. "I think we should go back to 2 nights a month." That's when I laughed. I actually laughed. Out loud. "Are you negotiating with me now?" I asked, still grinning like I was watching a bad sitcom. Her smile twitched. She hated that I was calm. "I just think we've both had time to think, and maybe we—" I cut her off. "I have thought, and I've decided 1 night a month is too generous." That shut her up. She stared at me, blinking, waiting for the punchline. When none came, her shoulders slumped. Then she did something I hadn't seen her do in a long, long time. She looked scared. Not because I'd yelled. I never raised my voice. But because, for the first time, she couldn't read me. And people like her, people who live off control and scripts and manipulation, they don't fear anger. They fear silence. And now she was living inside mine. It was never about revenge. Not at first. When I started pulling away, I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was trying to protect what was left of me. But the more I backed off, the more desperate she became. Not for me, mind you, but for control. For image. For the illusion that she still had her hands on the wheel. I think that's why she invited me to the dinner. Out of nowhere, she texted, "Having a few people over Saturday. Would mean a lot if you came." No emojis. No heart. Just a simple line, sent at 11:23 p.m. I stared at it for 10 minutes before replying. "I'll think about it." I knew I'd go. Not because I wanted to see her, but because I needed to see the lie with my own eyes. I needed to know how deep it ran. Saturday came. I showed up late on purpose. She greeted me at the door in a soft green dress I hadn't seen in years, the kind she used to wear when she still cared what I thought. She looked surprised to see me, like she hadn't expected I'd show. That was my first clue. The invitation wasn't about reconnection. It was about guilt management. The guests were her co-workers mostly. I recognized a few. Everyone acted polite. But there was tension in the room. And then there was him. I saw him in the hallway, standing near the bookshelf, pretending to study the titles like he was interested in poetry. He didn't look at me, but he knew who I was. His jaw tightened. He shifted his weight like he was bracing for something. Coward. Later, when I stepped into the guest bathroom, I saw it, the photo strip. 4 tiny square photos tucked into the frame of the mirror. Him and her. Goofy faces. Foreheads touching. One shot of them kissing, her hand on his cheek like I hadn't felt in years. I didn't take the photo. I just stared at it. Like someone standing in front of a gravestone, mourning something that had already died long ago but only now realizing it. I walked out of the bathroom calm, collected, even smiled at a guest on the way to the kitchen. But inside me, something shifted. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Clarity. This wasn't a marriage anymore. It was performance art. And I was done playing the sad little husband on the sidelines. Before I left that night, I pulled her aside. Just outside the kitchen, under the dim hallway light. "You left something in the bathroom," I said. "What?" she asked, genuinely confused. I leaned in close. Not threatening. Just enough so she couldn't look away. "Your real face." She flinched. Just slightly. Enough for me to see that the mask was cracking. Then I walked out. Didn't say goodbye to anyone. Didn't wait for her reaction. I just let the silence hang in the air like a noose. The next morning, she called 8 times in a row. And when I didn't answer, she showed up again. But this time, she didn't knock. She banged. And what she screamed through the door made it clear. She thought she was the one being betrayed now. I didn't open the door right away. She pounded so hard it shook the glass panels, like she thought sheer noise would undo everything she'd done. I stood in the hallway of Graham's place, just watching the door, listening. She kept saying my name, not shouting, but not crying either. That tight, frantic tone people use when they know they're losing something but don't understand how, or when it slipped through their fingers. When I finally opened the door, she looked smaller. Not physically, but in presence. Her arms were crossed, her jacket was only half-zipped, and her hair was thrown up like she hadn't planned this visit, like she'd acted on impulse, and the consequences were just catching up. "Can we talk?" she asked, eyes darting past me into the apartment, trying to see who I might be with. I stepped aside, not saying a word. She walked in like she still had some claim on me, or maybe just a habit of ownership. I let her sit on the couch while I stood near the window, arms crossed, waiting. "Why are you doing this?" she finally asked. I raised an eyebrow. "Doing what?" Her voice trembled. "This cold, distant version of you. You're not even trying anymore." That's when I laughed. Not loudly. Just one of those bitter chuckles that burns the back of your throat. I turned toward her, arms still crossed. "Trying," I said. "You penciled me into your life like a dentist appointment. You gave me one night a month, and even that came with lies. And now you're surprised I stopped begging to be heard again?" She opened her mouth, but I didn't let her speak. "I saw the pictures," I added. "In the bathroom. You and him. So please, if you came here to spin some new version of this, just stop." For the first time in months, she didn't have a reply ready. Her lips parted, then closed again. Her eyes blinked rapidly like she was buffering. "He meant nothing," she said finally, barely a whisper. I looked at her for a long second, then walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water, just to give myself something to do other than explode. "You said, one night a month," I said without looking at her. I agreed. "You just didn't think I'd follow the rule better than you." She stood up quickly. "You're acting like I'm the villain." I turned around slowly and met her eyes. "Aren't you?" Silence. Heavy, thick, electric silence. She looked down. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought we were just drifting." "You didn't drift," I said coldly. "You steered." She tried to say something else, but her voice cracked. I saw her eyes welling up, and for a split second, I felt that old tug in my chest, the part of me that still wanted to comfort her, even now. But then I remembered the sock in the bedroom, the wine glasses, the drawer, the lie she had printed and organized and lived inside of while I was still stupidly trying to save something she'd already burned down. "I'm staying with Graham for a while," I said flatly. "I need space." Her face twisted, like she couldn't believe I'd used her own words against her. "You're giving up?" she asked. "No," I said, walking to the door. "You already did. I'm just showing up late to the truth." She hesitated, then walked out without another word. But I knew that wasn't the end. And I was right, because 5 days later, I got a message that changed everything. And it wasn't from her. I was half asleep on Graham's couch when I got the message. No caller ID. No saved contact. Just a text with 6 words that froze the blood in my chest. "She's lying to both of you." That was it. I stared at the screen, unsure if it was spam, some prank, or worse, someone who knew too much. I waited. 10 seconds. Then 20. My thumb hovered over the block button, but then another message came through. "Check her email. Folder marked rent. Password is your birthday." She never deleted it. Now, listen, I'm not proud of what I did next. But when you've been manipulated, sidelined, and made to feel insane for months, You start chasing the truth even if it means digging through the dirt. So I logged in. Same email she'd always used, the one I used to help her recover when she forgot the password in Vegas. And sure enough, there it was. A folder buried under spam and old newsletters. Rent. And inside was everything. Payment logs. Receipts. Hotel reservations made in her name, but paid for by someone else. Not him, not the guy from the photo booth, but another man. A different name entirely. A different city. Airfare. Car rentals. Venmo screenshots. And in the middle of it all, emails. Actual emails. With subject lines like, next Thursday confirmed, and he still thinks you're at book club? I wanted to throw my phone through the window. I couldn't believe it. The guy I'd suspected, the one in the photos, was just one of them. The distraction. The convenient decoy. But there was someone else. A real arrangement. Someone who was literally paying for time with her. And she thought I'd never look. I messaged the unknown number back. Who are you? No reply. Not right away. But 5 minutes later, I got a photo. A blurry one, taken from across a restaurant patio. Her, sitting across from a man I'd never seen before. Laughing. Holding his hand across the table. Timestamp 2 weeks ago. 2 days before our last scheduled monthly night. My chest caved in. I sat on the floor and stared at that photo like it was a crime scene. Because it was. It wasn't just the cheating. It wasn't even the lying. It was the precision. The performance. The way she had engineered an entire routine, curated dates, divided affection, set boundaries like rules in a board game, and still played every side of the board. I wanted to confront her. I wanted to scream. But instead, I did something colder. I sent her one message. Just 5 words. We need to renegotiate Thursday. She replied instantly. What do you mean? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because for the first time in this entire twisted story, I was the one writing the rules. And she didn't even realize the next move was already in play. Thursday came faster than I expected. Funny how slow time feels when you're in pain, but how fast it moves when you finally decide to do something about it. She had no idea what was coming. She greeted me at the door with that same artificial warmth she'd been perfecting for months, like nothing had changed. Like we hadn't just had weeks of silence, or like I hadn't discovered a second man funding her double life. I made salmon, she said brightly. Your favorite. I stared at her for a moment too long before walking past her into the kitchen. There were candles. Real ones. Not those cheap battery-operated things we used to use when we were actually broke and in love. She had music playing. Jazz. The kind she always said made her feel expensive. Everything about the night was staged. She was trying. Or pretending. Or both. And I let her. I sat through dinner. Ate 2 bites. Watched her pour wine with hands that didn't shake. Watched her talk about nothing. About work. About how her friend got engaged. About how maybe we should take a weekend trip together soon. Like old times. I waited until her second glass of wine before I spoke. I saw your photos, I said quietly. She blinked. Photos. The ones you thought you hid. The ones of you and him. And the other him. And the receipts. The folder. The payments. Her smile cracked, but only slightly. She was still wearing the mask. She always wore it well. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, reaching for her glass. You never were a good liar, I replied. You were just betting I wouldn't look. Silence fell like thunder. She froze, like a deer caught mid-step in a minefield, unsure which way would get her blown up faster. I didn't, she started, but I cut her off. Save it. She looked like she might cry, but nothing came. Just that trembling breath, the start of some excuse that never landed. And then I reached into my jacket pocket and slid a small envelope across the table. She stared at it. What's this? The bill. She frowned. What? For my time. My silence. The hotel nights I didn't question. The humiliation I wore like a second skin every third Thursday while you played wife to someone else. Her mouth fell open, but I wasn't done. I itemized everything. 1 night a month for 11 months. Gas. Dinner. Emotional labor. Lost hours. It's not revenge. It's an invoice. She pushed the envelope back across the table. This is sick. No, I said calmly. What you did was sick. What I'm doing is math. She stood up, now visibly shaking. You're being cruel. And you, I said, were efficient. I stood too, adjusted my jacket, and looked her dead in the eyes. I used to think love meant forgiving anything. Now I think it means never pretending it didn't happen. She didn't speak. Couldn't. Her whole body folded in on itself like she'd been punched and didn't know where from. I walked out without another word. But what she didn't know, what I hadn't told her yet, was that I wasn't done. Because there was still one more person left to hear the truth. And the next message wasn't going to her. I didn't send the message to her. I sent it to him, the second man. The one she thought was safely tucked away in another city, another compartment of her life. She believed her lies were separate, that her worlds would never touch. But I'd been quiet long enough to learn that all houses built on deception eventually collapse into each other. I found him easily. His email was on the hotel receipts. His name was in the Venmo logs. A quick search gave me more than I needed. So I wrote him the simplest message I could. She told us both a different version of the same lie. You deserve to know. I attached a copy of the planner. A few screenshots. Nothing hateful. Just facts. He replied 2 days later. His message was short. Just 5 words. Thank you for your honesty. I never heard from him again. But I did hear from her. It came in waves. Texts, missed calls, voicemails filled with outrage that slowly gave way to begging, and then silence again. She even emailed me a letter. 8 paragraphs. Apologies, confusion, tears I couldn't see. But I didn't respond. I wasn't cruel about it. I was just done. Some part of me had always thought the day I walked away would feel like losing a piece of myself. Like tearing a root out of the soil. But it didn't. It felt like air. Like I'd finally stepped out of a room I didn't realize was full of smoke. 3 months later, I signed the divorce papers. No drama. No courtroom showdown. Just a clean exit. I walked out of that building lighter than I'd felt in years. And here's the twist no one ever expects in stories like this. I'm okay now. Not in love with someone new, okay. Not look at me thriving on Instagram, okay. Just peacefully okay. I moved into a small place on the edge of town. Started reading again. Joined a cycling group. Fixed up an old guitar I hadn't touched since college. For the first time in years, I stopped feeling like I had to earn someone's love just to survive. And then, one Saturday morning, I met someone, completely by accident. At a bookstore, of all places. She was arguing with the clerk about a return policy, laughing at her own stubbornness. We locked eyes. It was nothing dramatic. No violins, no sparks. Just simple and kind. We talked about coffee and terrible movies and what makes a person stay when love gets hard. We didn't talk about my past. Not yet. But I knew when I finally did, I'd be able to say it without pain. Because I lived through it. Because I walked away. Because one night a month turned into a lifetime I almost gave up, and I'm never trading my time away again.